about some strange things. And these kinds of things, in my opinion, are not usually, I should say, they usually aren't handled very well by the Christian community. These are some areas that, if I had to give a grade for the report card for most Christian churches, most Christian people, I think I would not give them a passing grade. That's probably true even on some of these things we spoke about in terms of being loving and being kind. In my opinion, I don't think that Christians embody the kind of kindness that Christ suggested and demonstrated. But we've talked about that all term. There's some other things, however, that, and that's timeless. That's something that has not changed through history. But there's some other things that are on the horizon and that are even around us, that some typical Christian responses to things that were not their idea are not going to cut it. They're going to further divorce our religion from the world that we live in. And some people, that's what they want to do. That's what they want to do. They want to be isolated and persecuted. That is not what Jesus told us to make our goal. He told us that it could happen, but he did not tell us that that was our mission. We were to be like salt that mixes with the flavor of the world and brings out the flavors even more than they would otherwise be brought out. You don't put salt on your food so much that all you taste is salt. And that's what some people do in terms of their Christianity. They want to have their lingo and their interpretation of every event at the forefront. They want to decide how everybody else acts. They want to make it the law. That kind of thing is not what Jesus suggested. When Jesus said to be the salt, you don't usually go out to a nice restaurant. You don't go eat at the dining area at the Culinary Institute of America down in the valley. And they say, "How did you like the meal?" And you say, "The best salt." You know, that was the saltiest food I've ever tasted. In fact, I could really taste the salt in everything. It's just not what the salt is for. It's to amplify the good flavors. And the world we live in actually isn't all crap. There's good things in the world in which we live. There's good things in people, even the people that we think are the least good people. There's still something good about those people. Now, salt would draw out the best in everybody, no matter who they are, no matter what they're into, and even if they're not on your team. There are some things that are coming. When I say coming, they're already here for the most part, but they're not as popular right now. Very soon, everybody will know about them. Now, very few people know about some of these things. And some of them are a result of technology. When I was in your seat, when I was in these classrooms, not Chanchun, it wasn't finished yet, but Davidian Hall and most of the other buildings on campus, when I was a student here, the big deal that was changing and confronting the church and confronting American culture was that we were on the verge of becoming far more international, of being confronted with other people's cultures and having cultures start to blend. And it really hadn't happened all the way. It hadn't become such a thing, but we could feel that it was coming. And I had professors that were forward-thinking enough to give me a tip, to give my fellow classmates a tip. Gray Schneider was somebody who now he's going to be, after this year, a contract professor. He's going to go to part-time and sort of phase his way out of the classroom. But he was relatively new as a professor when I was a student. And I remember him pointing to certain things that he felt were looming that our church and that Christianity in general in the United States was going to have to confront. And he was correct. It's just that most people hadn't heard of them yet. Technology brought the world together even more since that time, since the late 70s and early 80s when I was a student. Technology has made it so that now with your phone you can text somebody on the other side of the planet in whatever language you like, and your phone probably can help you to contact. I know it's probably a lousy translating system, Babelfish or Google Translate or whatever. You don't want to trust it, but at least you'll know kind of what the person's talking about if you run their message through that, even if you don't speak their language. Today, technology, in addition to connecting us like we're now used to online, is on the verge of connecting us in some really bizarre ways. The connections are not going to be like just emailing or texting. And we're already just starting to see experimentally what is going to be very common very soon. When you each have sons and daughters and children that we don't have a gender term for yet. We haven't decided what to call living, breathing, loving human beings that are neither son nor daughter. But it's going to be very common. So we're going to have some word for it by the time several of you are standing here teaching. And that will seem strange to you. It will not seem strange to your children. I want you to imagine that you have a relative, and that relative can be your spouse, or a parent, or a brother or sister, or your own kid, or whoever you'd like to imagine. But right now, if you can think of your favorite living relative, you just bring to mind your favorite living relative, or just your favorite person. I'd like you to bring them to mind. Picture how much you care for them and how much you enjoy when you get a chance to talk with them. And then I want you to picture that person during this class period. That person has, and you can make it up in your mind what it is that happens to them. An aneurysm, a stroke, very, very high fever that comes on with meningitis all of a sudden with convulsions, or a car accident, just something that's just, they were fine when you came to this class period, but by the time this class is over, that person is en route to some, not just to the closest hospital, but they're being airlifted, they're in a helicopter. In 10 minutes they're going to be in a helicopter. Wherever it is they are, they're en route to a large teaching hospital, UCSF, Stanford, Davis Sacramento Medical Center, Johns Hopkins, Barrows, some big, serious neurological institute. And so then you get a text as soon as you're out of class, and you say, I better go to them. And you end up going through all this stuff on your phone and this lousy reception in the waiting room. There's a bunch of magazines from 2013 and 2014 that are in the waiting area. A couple of articles that I've already read or seen or heard, old news. And then you're told that the person is in a coma. You can imagine it either way you want, your choice. They induce the coma or the coma is spontaneous, whatever you prefer. I don't know what to prefer in those kind of things, but probably induced. And then the days move on, and this person appears to be permanently locked in. That means that they can't see and they can't hear and they can't feel. Their brain isn't listening to their senses. So there they lay on the bed. They're paralyzed too. They're not able to move. They do spontaneously blink their eyes, but it's been tried. They don't know Morse code. In fact, it doesn't even appear that they can get any sensations to know that you're trying to communicate with them and develop some code even with their blinking, and you're not even sure that's voluntary. And then the neurologist says, you know what though? When we conduct EEG scans, it's obvious that this person's brain's still active, that they're still thinking, and they're still feeling. In fact, it appears that they might still have the same rich inner thought life based on what patterns we're seeing in the EEG displays. And they say, would you like to communicate with the person directly? It would take some practice. We would have to use brain stimulation that reflects the EEG readings from your person. Then we'll translate that into brain stimulation codes using weak magnetic and weak electrical signals that go directly into your brain, but they will reflect the person's thoughts. And then we'll detect your EEG signals, and the person will be able to detect yours. So you'll be able to think, and the person will hear what you're thinking. You'll be able to picture something with your mind's eye, and the person will be able to see what you're picturing. Like, here, let me show you something, and then you bring a picture to mind. Or even look at something and they can see what you're looking at. You'll be able to see what they're imagining. And that way you could read and they would be able to read as you're reading. You'd be their eyes. And you'd be able to have this very intimate conversation. You would, however, need to remember that the privacy that you're used to in your own thoughts. If you have a thought that pops in, the person will be just as aware of the thought as you will. And you'll be aware of their thoughts. So if you have any issues in the relationship that have been a secret, the likelihood is that it's not going to remain a secret at all. So here's your favorite person. Here's the technology. Would you do it? Would you put on the hat with the electrodes and communicate with that person? Or would you say, that's unnatural, I don't believe in that sort of thing, let them sit there alone and be miserable, or let other people talk with them, but I'm sorry, that weirds me out, and too bad. Our relationship is over, because I'm not gonna do any weird stuff with any weird electrodes. What would you do? What would you do? Yes?
I would go ahead and try communicating with them, because that would kind of be like how the cell phones first came out. It's just a whole bunch of electric waves, and I bet a lot of people, when the cell phone came out, didn't want to use it because they didn't know it was unnatural.
True.
Whereas this time, that would kind of seem unnatural for us.
Yes, it will. It'll seem bizarre and scary. So you would try to communicate with them. Okay. Anyone? Yes.
I would do it too. I feel like that could be like the last way you talk to them. You might have to do things that are complicated, but
Yeah.
it's better than like maybe never communicating.
Yeah. What if they were going to live for the same amount of years or longer, way longer than they would have been expected to for the next 100 years? Would you be willing to continue your relationship like that?
Really close.
Excellent. You will. Yes, sir.
I would too. I think of the different stories that you hear about medical mishaps where people just couldn't tell that people's heartbeat was actually still going at a very, very little, weak signal, and people were sent to the graves and then found, turned
Yes, that's right.
around. And not to mention the other documented ones that confirmed that yes, this person's still alive even though
Yes.
he's dead.
People that were in comas for 20 some odd years, and then they come out and they say, I heard it all.
Yeah.
I heard you guys discussing, I wish he just died.
I think that's love, sacrificing your comfort, because that would be a huge sacrifice
It is.
on anyone's part, on this side.
Yeah,
But I think that shows true love.
absolutely.
If I didn't do anything, I personally feel like I'd be in self-regret for the rest of my life.
Yes,
And I feel like there was something I could have done and I didn't do it.
yes.
So not only affecting me, but that person's family as well.
Very good. Yes.
I think, I would too, but I feel like, I don't know if that's 100% fair to the person that's, strapped there. Sure, they can experience what I'm experiencing to a certain extent, but, they're never gonna have their own life. So, is that,
Would you kill them?
well, I feel like they're still dead, even with me being attached to them. Sure, they're alive, right? And we are, communicating, we're having a good relationship, and I would probably love something like that just because to have someone's access to my thoughts that quickly would be cool, but, I think at the same time, is it fair to, almost tease them with life when they can't experience it for themselves?
What if they can? But you have to be the vehicle for the experience.
But how
What if
so?
they could make it wireless through the cell phone system so that when you go to the water park or whatever, the person is able to experience it with all their senses as if they were at the water park, indistinguishable? How would that be?
I mean, I guess, yeah, that's more so, it makes more sense, I guess.
Sure. Wouldn't it be cool though?
Yeah.
Is that then the same as someone living in VR then? Basically?
It's exactly
A
the
video
same.
reality?
But it isn't virtual reality, is it? It's your reality, except that
It's not fair.
your reality is a virtual reality. And so is mine. It's the one that we create a matrix for in our mind. It isn't the one outside of us, and it's different for each of us. It has some similar patterns for most people to most other people. But that's the bizarre thing, is that we've recognized that we are all, our conscious experience is a virtual reality. And it's less intense, it's less vivid of a reality than the realities that we are very soon going to be able to strap on our head.
Another quick question. If they're then living through your head, isn't that your reality? So they're not living their life, they're living your life.
Yes, which is a little bit like spending 3 or 4 hours every day watching virtual reality TV. Watching reality TV,
But it's not their reality. reality, then there wouldn't be really a point, right?
Hmm?
If it's not their reality, then it wouldn't really be a point to it, right?
I don't know. My wife and I were watching a series on Netflix over the last few weeks called Tribes, where some photojournalists, you know about it. They go into like different, like people living tribally, without too many modern conveniences, and they're exploring from a kind of anthropological perspective. And we're probably, honestly, at least this year, we're not going to go to the highlands of New Guinea, and we're probably not going to motor up the Amazon to some remote spot. But I feel like we're having this experience. We're also watching something called, I think it's called Up North or something like that. It's just a thing where they're going back and forth between three different people, three different situations, people that live way above the Arctic Circle in Alaska, out in the snow all year,
Yeah.
And we're watching that, and I'm probably not going to go. I mean, I might enjoy it for a while, but I don't want to go hunt caribou. But I'm really kind of into watching, and I'm having the experience, hearing some guy hook his dogs up, and he's going up the river once it's solid enough, gee, ha, it seems pretty interesting to me. Some days more interesting than life in England.
Yeah. So
I
that
don't
should
know.
be-
But also, wouldn't it not necessarily be fair? Like, I know this is gonna sound ridiculous and possibly selfish, but like, isn't it not completely fair to you either? Because like, you said that we would be able to hear their thoughts as well, right? So if they can't feel, see, hear, like that's as much of my reality now because our brains are connected.
So it's lopsided.
So like, what about if their reality overcomes my own, and then like we both end up just like not in a good place?
Oh, that their reality overcomes your own. Like if you made a permanent connection. Wouldn't that be an interesting marriage?
As
What if marriage became having an implant in each person so that you blended your consciousness so that you truly were like one person? I know there's people who would stand in line for that kind of an experience. What if it was reversible? Might be kind of lonely after a while if you got a divorce.
I read a book that had a similar concept to that, and it was with two brothers, and the older brother ended up kind of like hijacking the younger brother's mind, and the younger brother just went insane from his thoughts.
Very interesting. So one kind of took over the other.
Yeah, and like the little brother couldn't distinguish what his thoughts were anymore, and he ended up committing suicide in the end.
Fascinating.
Which later on made the brother commit suicide because he also had those suicide thoughts from the younger brother.
That's fascinating. What was the book, you know?
It's called Nightmare Inspectors.
Nightmare Inspectors. I like it already. In 1976, Julian James wrote a book that is about what he called the bicameral mind. James hypothesized that we have two aspects, like two personas, one in each hemisphere of our brain. And we kind of primarily live in the side on the left hemisphere. And the right hemisphere is like less available. It's contributing, but it's kind of like the silent partner. That persona, when it actually, though, asserts itself, and when we kind of have it take over, like one of the brothers in Nightmare Inspectors, right? When the right side presents itself like a persona instead of sort of passing memos, then we experience this, some sort of a feeling that there's another person present, like think that we have an angel that's with us, or a demon, or that there's like a UFO visitor that phases in and out of sort of our awareness. And if the person on the right hemisphere says things, that we experience them like we've heard the voice of God, or that we've heard a demon talking in us, depending on sort of the attitude and our belief structure. We interpret it according to our demonology or our angelology or our theology or our mythology, and it depends on our culture and our religion, what we really believe. Or what we've been exposed to, I suppose, in fiction or gossip or folklore or whatever. In order to test that, a couple of people in the late 90s, and they're still working, decided to try to see if they could mess around with the temporal lobe on the right and have magnetic impulses that in a pattern that mimics the kinds of patterns that they detect with EEG that they believe are coming from the limbic system, especially the amygdala. They would cause these rotating patterns of what they call, in signal theory, following a chirp curve that would be read into the temporal lobe, and they put this in like a hat so that things line up all in the right place. They actually put it in a helmet. And when they had this to test Julian James's theory, it was Michael Persinger and I can't remember the guy's first name, Koren, K-O-R-E-N was the other researcher, their partners. And Persinger's kind of out there more and writes and sells crap that comes out of their lab, make money, more than Koren. So you don't hear Koren very much, but you hear a lot about Michael Persinger. You've probably heard of the resulting product that you can go online. You can, in fact, if you have your devices now, just Google in your devices. Just get your phone and just Google God helmet. You can say B-U-I, buy God helmet, and Google that, and you'll come up with the first thing that comes up will probably be endorsed by Persinger, and it's kind of on. When you look at it, it looks like sort of a goofy little fly-by-night thing, like you buy a wooden box, you know, like on Napoleon Dynamite when the guy shocked himself real good, thinking he was going to go travel back in time and actually complete that football play, you know, Uncle whatever his name was on Napoleon. Like some stupid thing you buy when you're a sucker. This is not a sucker's purchase. It's real hokey the way it's for sale on there. It looks like something that you should have sense enough not to do, and they want several $100s. I don't know. How much is it? Is it 400, 300 something? How much is it now? Does it say how much to buy a God helmet? Go to the bottom of the page. They actually...
$649.
Oh, inflation.
$20 in shipping in the US.
Oh, holy cow, God is expensive now. God's gone up. You used to be able to put $1 in the offering plate, and now it's $600. You know? So what happens with this helmet is you put it on, and this is real. That is not snake oil. If you shelled out the $600, I'm not suggesting that you do, but if you did, put on the helmet, a percentage of you, even if you blinded it or even double blinded it and you didn't even know it, you just thought it was just, you know, a helmet with a cool sound system in it, because it has, in 2014, it actually did adequately blind a study, and it turns out that even though earlier some famous skeptics, including Dawkins, by the way, including Richard Dawkins, some famous skeptics poo-pooed the idea of the God helmet. They're pretty much just against anything that's new. I mean, or spiritual, or anything that they can't get their hands on and look at and color on with a crayon. They're against everything. Skeptics are against everything. It's one thing to have a critical mind and to be kind of skeptical about things that you haven't proven. That's a good thing. But identifying your role as just being against things automatically, that's not curious. That's not a curious way to be. And it's arrogant. I'm going to say real openly, people like the amazing Randy and Richard Dawkins, they're just arrogant and little-minded. You know, they can have a huge IQ, I don't care. They're just tiny little against things people, you know. Jesus gave us an example of moving toward things, not moving away from things, especially out of fear. Jesus said, you could go through and count the number of times Jesus told people, and I mean commanded, don't have fear. That's a command. That's not an encouragement. Fear not. Don't be anxious. Worry not about whatever. Just don't worry. Don't worry about tomorrow. And a lot of times as religious people, we have a bucket. We sort of have a little upside down helmet that holds water that we put everything that we're afraid of, that we're terrified of. And it's all Satan. It's always Satan. Somebody does something new, it's Satan. Somebody's going to the moon with NASA, that's Satan. Somebody's got a cell phone, Satan again. Somebody's car can talk to them out of the dashboard, clearly Satan. No matter what. New kind of music, Satan again. It's always Satan. You know what would really scare people that scare easily like that? It would really bother them too. In fact, I think they would be ready to say that they kind of could have some counsel they could give to Jesus, and he'd have had a better ministry had he listened to these people. Look how he dealt with the devil. Now, don't deal with the devil. Just don't move away from the devil. Move toward Christ. And let him deal with the devil. Don't actually move away from evil and pain. Move toward goodness. Move toward love. Move toward bliss, joy, peace, fair play, decency, chastity, temperance. Move toward these things, but don't move away. Don't be against what other people are for. Be for what you're for, or you don't have a point. You don't have anything when all you have is what you're against. And what you're against, guarantee you, that's what you're about. That's what you're about. If your whole life is spent being against the devil, you're about the devil. Period. The scariest thing for some people who are afraid and against everything, and everything is the devil, would be to just go through like you just have, I hope, or like you're going to between now and this time next week. Go through the Gospels and look at Jesus' relationship with Satan. How's that for a spiritual idea? Go through and look at how he dealt with and all the interactions he had with Satan. Check it out. After he was baptized, the Spirit led Jesus where?
To the wilderness.
Two of you. It was a tie. And Jesus did certain things in the wilderness and didn't do certain things in the wilderness. One of the things he didn't do was eat. What else happened in the wilderness besides just not eating? He prayed. What else?
Tempted.
Hmm?
Was tempted.
He was tempted. He was tempted. The temptations were a little different than I'm used to. Usually, I don't have a dude with hoofs and a pitchfork who comes into my office and sits down across the desk from me and says, okay, here's a plan. Good idea. You got a minute? I want to show you something. All right, I'm going with you. Yes?
But wasn't Satan in the image of an
Yeah, he
angel?
appeared as an angel. And even then, he was
What else would
one
you
of
expect
God's
him to-
most beautiful
What would you
angels before that.
What would you expect him to appear like? So it kind of sounds like he came like himself. Because that's what he is.
Yeah. So it wouldn't be the dudes with hooves and everything.
Well, right, because we made him up as a monster in a suit with a zipper at the back, but he unzipped. You can play the burlesque music, you know, the stripper music or whatever. He took it off, and there was the angel. There he is, there he is, not in the nonsense form that we put him in the movies or in the comic book and everything, and on our T-shirts, you know, or on the logo for your football team or anything. But he was right there as himself, because they already were acquainted. They go way back. This is the guy that made him. And so there they are. They had a relationship. Still. And check it out. It says, you ready for this? It says that the devil took Jesus to the pinnacle of the temple. Has the devil ever taken you anywhere? You want to follow in that footprint? When you, the theology majors, you're getting people ready for baptism, getting them ready to really walk in Jesus' footsteps so they can get ready to have a significant 3-year ministry. Be ready. Now, one of the things that's going to happen after I baptize you is you're going to get driven way out into the woods, way out in the desert, for more than a month. You won't need your lunch. And when it's over, get ready. The devil is going to take you to the top of Trump Tower. If somebody came to church and told you that the devil transported them this week to the highest point on the tower on the Golden Gate Bridge and they had a conversation, say, yeah, when I was talking to Satan on Wednesday, would you say, now let me clarify, the devil took you somewhere? Well, yeah. I'm into really following in Jesus' footsteps, so it's all good. I mean, in my guts, it doesn't say all good. Say, yeah, but that's because he was Jesus and we're not. Guess what? We use that to excuse anything Jesus did that we don't want to do. And if Jesus didn't do something and we want to do it, then we just say, well, that's because he was Jesus. Do you realize how vacuous that statement is? It means nothing. It's not an argument at all. It's just, I don't like what you're saying. That's kind of what it amounts to. Oh, that's because he was Jesus. Okay, well, yeah, we know he was Jesus. And there's the cart with the overhead projector, but what are we really talking about? It's completely irrational. It means diddly nothing. Yes?
Wouldn't you say that that's like an actual experience of God, though, in the sense that, like, because whatever you're saying, that we need to move towards good as opposed to escaping from evil, but isn't it the more we move towards good, the devil's gonna follow us? So in a way, like, it's kind kind of like back and forth because like either you're moving towards the devil or the devil's moving towards you because he's threatened by the God in you.
Yeah, yeah. You ever seen on YouTube? I know you've never done this because you're not sick and cruel, you know, of course. But you ever seen on YouTube when they manage to tie something like a balloon or something to a cat's tail? It's mean, but it's funny. It runs all over the place trying to get away from itself. And it doesn't realize it's bringing it with it. And that's what we do. When we move away from stuff like that, we don't realize. We like to blame the depravity in ourselves, in our fundamental nature. We like to blame that on some external thing that we think that if we just shake our finger at things enough, it's not, but it's inside of us. If the devil died yesterday, I could have my own brand of sick and sin just fine, entirely unchanged without his help. I'm bad enough that I don't need his help to be a pig, to be mean and thoughtless and selfish and nasty. I don't need his help, and you don't either. You got it. You got this one. You don't need him at all. It's dangerous to think that we can externalize that because we kind of get ourselves off the hook. We kind of minimize it. You know, think about what it says in Steps to Christ, which by now I think you've kind of, at least, you either read through it or you have a guilty feeling about not reading through it. The Steps to Christ thing, where Ellen White talks about the absolute impact of sin and what it, you know, has total effect. It's our whole value system. Sin is so significant that what we think is good is horrible. Our very values that we think are our highest religious values. Every bit of us is still about ourselves. Yes?
Well, then would you say that was like the problem at the beginning of time that started sin? Because like Eve questioned like whether or not like she's good enough like
Yeah.
in her creation like herself.
Right. And why did people feel naked? Because they were looking at themselves. When she and Adam felt naked, we divorced that because we put on pants and a shirt and some sandals and say, well, I'm not naked. No, we're naked the same way they felt naked. We want to cover up. We spend billions trying to cover ourselves up every day. We spend billions trying to buy things because each of us stands in front of the mirror and feels bad about what we see. That breaks my heart to picture that each of you stands in front of the mirror and go, why am I so fat? Why do I have such skinny arms? Why am I this shade? Why is my face shaped like that? Why is my nose all crapped up like it is? Look at mine. It was broken when I was a kid fighting in the neighborhood. It's completely, the septum is on one side, and I can look in the mirror and go, well, crap, I get to look like that. Go through life, I have to go out and go, gee, look at me. And you do too. That horrible feeling, knowing that other people will look at you and you won't compare as well as some of the people you see in the magazine or on the TV or in class. You look at people, look around this room and find somebody who looks better than you do. And know this, they're looking around the room and finding someone who they think looks better than they do. It's an endless, vicious cycle of, I just don't like the way I was created. I feel sort of about being who I am. That's the nakedness, that's sin. We'll talk more on Wednesday.